I'm recording this?
Yeah, we look like we're live.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Does
you
it
can see us?
record automatically?
It says you're on.
Are we recording? Yeah, we are recording. Okay,
Yeah.
great. All right. All right, so I guess we can get started. Hello, everyone. My name is Jordan Poles. I'm a third-year medical student here at the NYU School of Medicine, and throughout my 3 years here, I've had the great fortune to work with Greg Dorsainville. He's with our Institution for Innovations in Medical Education, and he has really been sort of pioneering a lot of the VR technology innovation that's been going on here at the medical school. And over the past 3 years, I've had a chance to really work with him and sort of follow this innovation as it happens, really see how technology has changed the way that we're teaching our students, and really, transformed our capacity to allow people to visualize these really, really complex, maybe they be anatomic structures or difficult concepts in physiology. A lot of it has been augmented by our VR and other sort of new technology educational experiences.
Yeah, so right now we're in the innovation room, which is a place where we have conversations with students and faculty to find out how emerging technologies might be useful in their studying or teaching. And so we've explored 3D printing, AR, which is augmented reality, virtual reality, and other imaging tools, and thinking about the student experience in the classroom, how to make it more engaging, how to figure out how to explain very difficult scientific understandings, and in particular with VR, how to make you get a superpower that you otherwise couldn't get because what this type of computing allows you to do. For the faculty, which has been very compelling for me, we've allowed them to think outside the box and gain skills that they otherwise would have never been able to have the time to do. But because of this level of computing, they can do that. That includes being able to draw in 3D, specifically like in anatomy, where their knowledge of anatomy is deep and strong, but to actually show that in things other than a cadaver, something digital, where you can share later on or discuss in person at like a digital whiteboard. They're using virtual reality to draw those things, but in a way that can explain that complexity a little bit better in a schematized version, not in the complicated version that, as you remember, how the cadaver is, where things are hard to discern in there. We're diving into simulation, where this is the first year where there was in the rotations when you're going into EM,
Emergency medicine.
and pediatrics. You had the opportunity to do different simulations where you were a physician in an emergency room. One of them, you were trying to save a situation where a baby was seizing and throwing up. And this one situation wasn't necessarily where you could do every single thing you can do in an emergency room, but it tried to capture the flavor of being in that experience where the mother's yelling at you, the nurse is asking you to hurry up, and to just get that feeling of the din of the emergency room, and all the different complications that might happen, where you will probably try to practice on how to stay calm and think through your training. And that one was a lot of fun because we had a room full of, I don't know if I explained this to you, we had a room full of 8 headsets. Everyone is in their own headset, and the students, even though the sound is coming out of the headset and there's beep, 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 all over the place, they were so focused in this experience that they were not distracted by their classmates doing the procedure right next to them. And that's one of the great affordances of this technology, is that because it's on your face, and it occludes the outside world, you are focused on the task at hand. There's nothing else. The outside world doesn't matter what is going on in front of you. It's happening in a hyper-realistic way where you feel like you can control what's going on. The other simulation application that we're trying out, it's called Oxford Medical Simulations. You had experience with that. What was that like for you?
Yeah, so just take a step back. VR virtual reality has been around for a little while now, since around the 1980s. Other game companies have sort of played around with this technology as a way of trying to get people into these worlds that are different from our own, something virtual, something manufactured. Back in the day, back in the 80s, this technology represented, blocks and these really, really horrible looking displays, nothing realistic at all. But as we've moved into, the early 2010s, we've seen this humongous boom in virtual reality technology that's really allowed us to replicate these surprisingly realistic scenarios that play out in the real world in a virtual simulation that allows us to really get a lot of fidelity. And I think fidelity is a big word in virtual reality because it means that, instead of a video game-like scenario where things aren't really, feel real, you don't have a lot of the options that you'd have in the real world, our virtual reality experiences really bring you a lot closer to that real-world scenario that you can never really get in the real world just by, chance. You don't have the opportunity to actually take care of the baby who's critically ill as a medical student. Virtual reality puts you in that world, gives you your medical degree, and says, here, try this out in this realistic scenario, but know that the stakes are low. You can make mistakes, you can learn from those mistakes, and you can grow. And that's really, for me, what has been the really impactful part of virtual reality. When I tried Oxford Medical Simulation, I was put in the room with an elderly man who was vomiting up blood. Not usually the kind of thing that we like to see. Vomiting blood is generally a bad thing. This is, a couple of years ago now, I had no clue what to do. And that was meaningful to me. As physicians, we're not always going to know the exact right thing to do. And so being put in a situation where I was out of my comfort zone, but I knew that I could make mistakes and learn without the repercussions of actually harming a real person, that gave me the power to start thinking and really start synthesizing some of my knowledge that I learned through all these lectures, both, from high school onwards into college, and here, all this lecture material suddenly got put into a real-world scenario. And that's meaningful. That's what we're all working towards in medical school. We want to take care of real people. Virtual reality through the Oxford Medical Simulations and things like that really allowed me to take the extra step before I got my medical degree and start taking care of patients. And for me, that was exciting, and that was a really, really good way of bringing that knowledge back together, back into something that I really want to be doing.
Yeah, so we're going to jump into a couple of the applications that we've explored the past couple of years. And I just want to keep in context how volatile technologies like this are, meaning one day this is the cutting edge thing and the next day it's not. And the paradigm shifts very quickly to something else. So this is the Quest. This is a standalone headset, which you haven't used yet.
No, I haven't given this one a try.
He's been too busy rotating. He hasn't been able to come by and try this one. This one doesn't connect to a computer. It's kind of like I would say the iPod of this sort of technology, where it realizes a lot of potential, a lot of wonderful thinking, where it has cameras on the outside that allows you to track the environment. So that means you can walk through the space. You're able to use your hands in the space using controllers too. And you're going to see that scenario when Jordan puts on a headset and he goes through one of the apps that he used in anatomy. So tell me, one of the apps in particular you used, Organon. Why were you using it?
Yeah, so I think it is really important to say that virtual reality has actually played several different roles in my medical school education. I just told you a little bit about my virtual reality clinical experiences, learning to take care of patients in a virtual setting. But before you get to taking care of patients, there's a lot of background and sort of foundational knowledge you have to build up. And for me, one of the most challenging parts of my preclinical stages of my preclinical learning before I got to the clinic was anatomy. Anatomy is a trial that every medical student goes through, wherein you try your best to really learn every structure there is to know in the human body.
Yeah.
And for those who are very good with visual spatial learning, they excel, and that's great. There's plenty of my classmates who didn't have much trouble with their anatomy education, but personally, I was not that good at anatomy, and so I needed some tools to help me out. And that's where virtual reality came in. In the second half of our anatomy education, so the first half is pretty much everything below the neck and above the pelvis. It's the trunk. And then we move out to the arms and legs, as well as the head and neck. And arms and legs really got troublesome for me. It got difficult because if you start looking at the musculature and the nerves and blood vessels in your arm, what you're going to start to realize is there's a lot of stuff going on in there. And it's not just in planes. It's not nice sheets of things. Things dive in and come out, and they're mixed in together. And so it's really, really hard when you're looking at that traditional anatomy cadaver to see the way things are meant to move in the arm, the way they're actually naturally placed inside of the arm. Unfortunately, anatomy is, to some extent, a destructive learning process. As you're going through your cadaver, you do end up cutting certain muscles to get to the stuff underneath. You have to fold stuff back, and essentially go deeper and deeper. Now, unfortunately, once you cut a muscle, there's not really any going back. You can't really put things back together the way they used to be. And all these different challenges came together to make the anatomy experience with the 3D Organon software really, really powerful for my learning. And the way that came into place was really just taking a 3D model of the arm, which contains, labels for all of the muscles, labels for all the nerves and the blood vessels, and then having the opportunity to sit there for an hour or two and just take it apart and put it back together. What Organon allows you to do is use the controllers to grab muscles and pull them out. And of course, once you release them, they can snap right back into place. And in doing this, you can sort of dig through the anatomy of the arm layer by layer and really unpack it, knowing that if you make a mistake, you can put everything back together and try again. And so, the day before or 2 days before the anatomy exam, I was in here on the virtual reality machine, really pulling things apart and testing myself, trying to label, if I see this in the cadaver, this is going to be this muscle or this blood vessel or this nerve. And for me, that really hammered it home, and I did actually, despite being terrible at anatomy, ended up doing quite well on the course. So I gotta say, virtual reality, not every student has this experience, but virtual reality really saved me during anatomy.
So I think this highlights, I think what's a little bit different from other places is that we're not necessarily telling you that you're going to come here and your entire experience is going to be in a headset. It's that different people learn differently. And some things, specifically spatial relations and 3D transformations, taking a cube and rotating it in your mind, or in this instance, looking at 2D images like in radiology or 2D images in a book, and being able to create that 3D image in your mind, that's increasingly, it's just very difficult to do with this level of complexity. So any additional tools that brings in fidelity, a level of realism, to be able to dissect, see how things are layered on top of each other, and then connect that to clinical relevance and why you're actually learning these things. So in the anatomy course now, the one that you did not take, we don't dissect anymore. We have perfectly created what's called prosected cadavers, where the region that you're taking a look at, you get in your group, you look at it together, and you try to find those structures. But you also try to find those structures in plastinated models in the model room, and you're able to see all of these things digitized on your phone, tablet, computer at home, and if you're fortunate enough to make time in virtual reality, where in Organon you're interacting and pulling away the objects, or in Sketchfab you're actually looking at a 3D representation of a plastination that's actually in the model room, where it's been labeled by our faculty. And faculty are taking these types of tools, or taking a real shine to these types of tools, because they're able to test you in new ways where you just didn't have that before, where you were doing it on your own, where now the faculty are directing you, this is what structures are important. And someone actually asked this question before we started the session. They're like, I polled students to ask them if they've used the VR and if they found it useful. When you come here, the time here is going to be spent on you figuring out what you find useful to learn what you need to learn. And we're with you on this journey where we want to provide you those tools. It might not be VR, but increasingly as we make the content that's relevant exactly to what you need, I think it will be VR. And so we're going to show you some of those things. Especially since we've been talking for 10 minutes, let's show cool things.
Yeah, so give you a bit of a demonstration of our VR experiences here. I'm just going to put on the headset off camera right now. We're going to switch on over so you can see what I am going to see inside the headset and using our controllers. Are we going to switch over? Great.
I'm just going to make sure that you have audio.
They're seeing what I'm seeing?
or can you check to see if it's coming through?
All set.
All right. So here we are in our first experience that we wanted to show you today. This is Sharecare VR. And as you can see, I've got a pretty realistic guy standing in front of me. And with this little control palette in front of me, I'm able to manipulate this model in a variety of different ways. So you can see I've started off by just pulling apart the model so I can see all these different organ systems that are represented in this technology, ranging from the kidneys, our GI tract, our brain, and our neurologic system. We've got a lot of options here. I can put them back together for us right here. But one of the really cool things about this software is it's going to give us a really deep insight into some of the physiology that we see causing disease in different people. So I want to start off by focusing in on the heart. I think that this is a particularly cool simulation that we have going on here. So you can see I just turn around and all of a sudden I have this fairly realistic virtual reality heart beating in front of me. And so I can actually spin it around and look at the different aspects of the anatomy itself. So we can see we have our different ventricles here. We have our right ventricle up front. We have our pulmonary vasculature. We have our aorta coming up, our aortic arch, and it's going to descend down into the rest of the body back here. But not only am I able to look at the outside, I can start flow through our chambers. So we have our atria up here, our ventricles. We can see blood through our valves. And one of the really excellent things here is I can start to look at the electrocardiogram, the electrical activity, which is going to correlate with the actual beating of the heart here. Now, it's nice to see the blood flow, but let's take a look at the electrical impulses moving through the heart. And what we have now represented in front of us is the electrical conduction system in the heart. You can see our SA node, our sinoatrial node up here, where our heartbeats originate. The electrical activity propagates through our atria, through our atrioventricular node here, and into the ventricles. Now, this is all well and good. This is a healthy heart beating away. But one of the really wonderful things is I can break this open and start looking at some diseases. So personally, I think the arrhythmias are very, very interesting. So let's take a look at AV block. An AV block is a condition in which the conduction of electricity through the heart is no longer working as it should. So here again, we're looking at the electrical conductivity, but we're looking at a normal heart. You see that every time the atria beat, the ventricles beat in time with it. They follow right afterwards. Now we're going to see what happens in a person who has, for example, a heart attack, where some of this conductive tissue, the actual cells that conduct electricity through the heart, start to get damaged. And what we'll see, we have three different severities here. We have first through second and third degree heart blocks being a block of the electrical conductivity through this region. I'm going to open up our EKG again. You'll see we have a very regular rate. We have these nice spikes with every single one of our contractions. Now let's see what happens if we start blocking things up. So I've added in a secondary block, and what you're going to see is we start having some beats that are missed. We have the atria beating, but you'll see there's no response from the ventricles. There's a block right here. Nothing's getting through. As we move to third degree, we're going to have even more of this dissociation. You see in irregular heartbeat results. We have the atria beating without the ventricles following along. They're kind of doing their own thing. And here we've sort of represented in a very intuitive way a disease process which might take you hours to learn in the classroom. We're showing it visually, and for me at least, this is the kind of thing that really helps me learn. You'll see we have a variety of different organs, and not only are we looking at arrhythmias in the heart, we have different sorts of disease states. So really here we're getting a very, very different view of the physiology than we would in the classroom, ranging from various degrees of atherosclerotic blockade and obstruction of blood flow through our blood vessels supplying blood to the heart. We can represent all sorts of different processes in a way that's intuitive to students such as ourselves. Another really, really interesting thing to think about for you all is that as doctors in the future, you might have to do a lot of teaching of your patients. People who are not necessarily as well educated as you in the sciences might need to understand, what it is that's going on in their body. And so increasingly, we're seeing some of these technologies used to illustrate complex principles in medical sort of knowledge to individuals who have little to no knowledge to begin with. And I think this is a really, really powerful tool. So not just for us learners as medical students, but also for our future patients. And do we want to do some more of the heart and some other stuff?
We really want you to show when you're in VR how there's tools in here to help you, whether it's label or actually move into, teleport, but show how this is fundamentally different than looking at an animation on your iPad.
Yeah, so Greg just brings up a really, really important point that I neglected so far. I've talked a lot about the ability of students to look at these models and really just look. But one of the really, really important things about being in virtual reality is more than just looking, it's actually understanding and interacting. And so one of the things that we can have our students do is start to draw on things. And drawing in 3D is a very, very different principle than drawing in 2D. I can get up in here and I can circle in different dimensions. So I can try and illustrate different things in 3D. And here I could be, for example, trying to teach myself or also my classmates. And likewise, our educators, our professors, can work with these different content creation tools. You know, we have all these different ways of sort of annotating and adding to our virtual reality. These are different ways that our professors here at NYU are finding new ways to illustrate previously complex principles. So you see I have drawing here. I can also erase, of course. And you know, this is a very, very basic tool, but we have a huge variety of tools for content creation. For example, we can have people go in and sculpt or annotate or draw. We have a lot of different ways to create things rather than just passively looking, and also to really interact with the materials we're learning with.
So I'd also point out what's happening when you're in virtual reality, how you're actually moving.
Yeah, so what you can actually see is right now I'm moving around the lungs, and I'm not pressing anything on the controllers. I am physically walking around in this room that you saw before. And so I'm able to position myself around these lungs, but I can also move with virtual reality. And so I can walk into and around things. I can place myself with you see the pair of feet on the floor. I can move around, and as you'll see, when we get to other organ systems, this becomes more and more important because it gives us different perspectives. And really, it's immersive. I feel like I'm standing in the room with this demonstration of here, the stomach. And so I can move inside. And if I want to take a closer look, all I have to do is really lean in. And so the actual physical movement of the body makes things quite immersive and allows you to really interact with things in a new and different way.
So a take home that I think you should reinforce is that you are controlling a computer now, but you're not doing it traditionally with a mouse, keyboard, or even touch. You're using your body's movement.
Yeah, so I'm currently just moving my hands in space. And one of the really cool things that I've seen is no matter the age of the person that we're trying to teach VR, a lot of people are able to pick this up really quickly because unlike, if you've ever tried to teach someone who's a little bit older how to play a video game, for example, or use a computer, there's sometimes a disconnect in how we interact with the technologies we're using. Virtual reality is very intuitive. It feels like I'm actually grabbing this little circle and moving it around in order to interact with things. I feel like I'm in a real world situation. That makes it really easy for me to interact with things. Drawing is as simple as moving my hand like I was drawing on a whiteboard or a chalkboard or something like that. So I think that's another really exciting thing. It's really easy to pick up VR and learn how to do new things all the time. And we're also seeing that people creating the software for us are coming up with new and interesting ways to interact with things. All these really interesting ways of working with the material have sort of come out with sort of clicking and dragging. You can pinch to zoom in some applications. There's a lot of cool ways to interact with the VR experience.
So I'm going to take you out of this experience.
All right, so we're going to switch experiences now. Oh, the other thing I forgot to mention, we also, of course, have labels and all sorts of different things.
Can I show them the labels?
Yes, please. So here we have a very, very nice labeling of our anatomy of our GI tract. Specifically, you will come to not exactly love all the blood vessels in this area, but they're very, very important. It's important to emphasize that this anatomy knowledge isn't abstract. We're not just learning these things to learn something. You realize very quickly once you get to your surgery rotation that the orientation of the splenic artery over here, the fact that it's tortuous and snake-like, is a very, very important feature that lets you actually identify it in the middle of a surgery so that you don't cut a person's splenic artery rather than something else. So these small little things do come back, and they do actually end up being practical and useful. I gotta say, some of the stuff I learned really did come in handy when I got to my surgery rotation. They thought I was smart. The joke's on them.
Okay, so let me start up the other.
Yeah, so now I'm really excited because I'm going to get to show you a 3D Organon, which is the software that I actually used back when I was in anatomy in order to sort of learn
a lot of these complex structures and their interactions. Yes. All right, so we're launching into the software. You want me to load it? I can load it from over here. Sure.
Change the library Steam.
Yeah, I noticed. It's pretty. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're loading in. All right, we are in. Can they see me? Or see my headset?
I can see you. Is it refreshing still?
A little bit. But it's fine.
How you doing?
Fine. Can they see?
Yes.
All right. So we are now in the 3D Organon software, and this is the software where, for me, the real uses of virtual reality came together. This is one of the first experiences that I thought was really way better than what we currently had available. And so what you can see in front of us is clearly a nice anatomic skeleton. But over here, you'll see we have this huge variety of different organ structures that we can choose to focus in on. And so I'm actually going to take you back to where this all began. We're going to look at the musculoskeletal system of the upper extremity of the human. And so we're going to click on the upper limb. And what you see is I get populated right away this arm. And we have clearly a lot of muscles, the names of which I've unfortunately somewhat forgotten. But I'm going to show you really what I was able to do here. So you'll see we have a lot of these muscles, and it looks kind of like spaghetti. There's stuff going all over the place. And I can start to pull out some of these muscles. Not only can I see the label, what this is palmaris longus, the right-hand side, I can start to look at actually what this muscle looks like. It's this very, very long, sort of skinny guy. And what's important here is that there's this very long palmaris tendon. So these are making up some of the tendons that transmit force from your arm down into your hand. So of course I can replace it back and it'll snap back into where it's meant to be. But for the time being, let's dig a little bit deeper. So I can start to pull things away. You see we get all of these very, very complex tendinous structures. Right now we're only looking at muscle as well, so I've even spared you all of the complexity of the nerves and the blood vessels, but I can start laying things out and pulling out the layers, looking at labels, examining, the actual morphology of these muscles and tendons, because as you can see, there's actually a good bit of variety of what these things look like. And in knowing what they look like, I do have some more information about what they do. Of course, it's also important to look at the name. Flexor digitorum means you're going to flex your digit. And if we look at these long tendinous structures, which normally, if I drag it back, you're going to see go right down into the palm, it makes a lot of sense as to why pulling on one of these tendons with this muscle can help you to flex your fingers. So we have a lot of these different tendinous structures. And you'll see eventually we get down to the bone, and you can see some of the bony attachments for muscles as well. You can see, where the muscle connects to bone. And there'd be a lot of blood vessels and nerves in here as well as we went on. But this really shows you that I'm able to pick this apart, pull apart this anatomy model, and if I really want to go back, I can just reset it all and go again. So if I want to go through and quiz myself, I can also turn off labels. I can do all sorts of things in order to make this a really, really nice sort of VR anatomy learning and quizzing experience. And you see there's a lot more than just muscles and bones. If we wanted to, for example, let's go take a look at our digestive tract. We can take a look through the celiac trunk, which is some of those blood vessels that I was talking to you about right before this. So if I pull out our intestines, you see a mess of blood vessels. But going back in, if we dig deep enough, we can start to see back here we have our spleen. And as I talked about before, if I pull away our pancreas, little halves, we can see our splenic artery, this little snaky guy coming right through here. Really, really important in surgery. And these are the kind of things that you really need to see in a 3D space. Knowing that there is this blood vessel that goes out to the left of the body is all well and good, but knowing, that this splenic artery is actually lying above the splenic vein that is paired with, that it comes off right over here in the celiac trunk. So I can actually move this and try and get a better angle so I can see here off the aorta we have the celiac trunk going to the splenic artery. These relationships are really crystallized and made clear and can be tested and explored using this virtual reality experience. It's really, really unique. Yeah. Okay. Anything else you want to show in Organon?
Yeah. Can you go into the pelvic bottom or the pelvis?
Yes. Let's see.
Show that complexity, because if they make the right decision to come here, the first thing they're going to be doing in anatomy is the trunk, and then they have to deal with this thing.
Yeah, so the pelvis is another one of those really, really tough areas, and it's pretty quickly visualizable why it's so complex. There's a lot of stuff in a very, very small space. And so you can see we clearly have these sort of recognizable organs. We have the uterus. Here's the female pelvis. We can sort of see the relationship of the uterus to the bladder. So this is here what we call an anteverted uterus, meaning that the body of the uterus lies forward. But it's important to realize this anatomic relationship because it can lie backwards in some individuals. And so in this case, we get an idea of what the anatomic relationships of the major organs are. But as we start to pull them out, we see also this very complex network of blood vessels and nerves. So I'm actually coming around the back here because I think that this is going to give me a better visualization of what's going on. And that's one of the luxuries of VR. In the cadaver lab, you have to physically flip the cadaver over to get to the back. Here I can walk around to the back, and you can see we have all these very, very important neurovascular structures running through this region, the names of which I've also forgotten, unfortunately. But we have the pelvic floor muscles, a lot of complexity, and by getting around these different angles, something you can't really do with a cadaver, I'm able to really interrogate how all these things run through the foramina, how the bony structures relate to the tendinous and the vascular structures. There's really a lot that we can do with the varied perspectives that are sort of given to us. We can come from above, and we can also move the structure up and come from below in order to see, for example, through our obturator foramen. So a lot of flexibility that is afforded to you by working with these newer technologies. Yeah.
Stay in there. I'm going to show you something.
Great.
You didn't get to use Sketchfab too much.
Not much, no.
Oh.
That's the other exciting thing. We're always coming up with new and interesting uses for these technologies around the medical school. We have a lot of really, really interesting new innovations that are coming through our doors every month.
Bear with me. This is worth it. Almost done. I don't think they can hear me because I turned off the room mic and I just have your mic on.
All right, so we're going to switch to a different experience for now. Just give us a quick second while we're switching over.
And right now, we're going to be, you won't see that spot. Here is a 3D model where, so you can take off your headset.
Fantastic.
What I want you to do is bring the mic over.
From the headset?
No, from over there. The actual mic. Yes. Okay, so we're at the desktop right now, and we're taking a look at Sketchfab. And this is in the browser, so that means that at any time students can access this content on any device. And in this one, it's actually been annotated by faculty, and this is an actual plastinated cadaver that you have in the model room, but you have access to it. And the difference between Organon and this is it's not interactive. You can't pull apart any of the objects that you want to take a look at. And in the plastinated view, you can't in the plastinated view, you can't pull anything or pretty much touch anything. So what this allows you to do is to be able to look at this closely with the notes from faculty, but again, there's no interaction. And you're not going to get interaction unless you're in the cadaver, which is in the anatomy lab, or you're using a VR tool to be able to pull apart and take a look at things and how they're layered on top of each other, which is really important to understanding anatomy, the way things are layered and how Jordan says duck in and out of them. So that's all I just wanted to show is a popular resource that students use, that even this resource you can look at in VR, where you're standing in front of it and you can stick your head into the pelvis and see these structures in a more immersive way.
Yeah, I think it's really exciting to be able to access these different resources on a variety of different platforms. And though you may not be here in the virtual reality room using our technologies, you can still be at home on your phone and get, a slightly diminished experience, but still a really, really nice reference and a really, really nice way to interact with the material. So say doing textbook reading isn't really cutting it for you, you're not really getting enough out of it, this will really allow you to try and get a new perspective, really just try something a little bit different. And it's kind of nice because here we're actually seeing the same exact structures of the celiac trunk that we were just looking at in Organon, and you can sort of see how this, giving us multiple different views of the same organ or of the same anatomic structures, can really enhance your learning. You can really give you different perspectives and allow you to see anatomic variation, for example. Not everyone's the same, and so having our pre-made models in Organon, but also looking at a plastinated version of a real human cadaver can be incredibly beneficial. And so I think that's another exciting aspect of this whole technology platform that we've got built up here.
Okay, so let's close on out. Hold on, let me...
Mic back?
No, we can just keep it there. Okay, we can get on camera. Great.
Alrighty, excellent.
So yeah, we're back in real reality. And like I said, this room is here to explore, say if you've seen something at other schools or if you want to investigate things, for us to procure them for you so you can be able to try them out. Jordan did that all the time. Says, I would like to do this. Talk about your 3D printing episode, the first one, remember? With the heart.
Yeah, so way back when, we've got a lot of different ways of interacting with new technology here at our School of Medicine. It's not just virtual reality. I don't know if we can turn the camera actually right over off camera. We have two of our 3D printers. These are state-of-the-art 3D printers. And one of the really exciting things is, sometimes virtual reality isn't going to be the best way of interacting. So sort of over here, we've got our plastic. This is going to print out solid plastics. This uses a liquid resin. Both allow us to get these really, really high detail prints. And this is just another way in which we can use technology to augment our learning experience. For example, for some people, they just find that looking at something in virtual reality doesn't cut it. They need to really hold something in their hands and interact with it. I found this to be the case when thinking about the heart and the electrical activity of the heart as is measured in an electrocardiogram. And so I need to physically hold something in order to manipulate it and work this all out for myself. And so what did I do? I actually contacted one of our librarians, and he was able to help me out with getting a free print off of our printer. I printed out this 3D heart that has these little pointers essentially showing which direction the electricity is coming when we're measuring the heart during an electrocardiogram. I've also printed out a variety of other teaching tools. Greg over here also printed out a structure called the Circle of Willis, which is this really complicated sort of ring of blood vessels that happens in the brain. It's incredibly important for our understanding of how a stroke will impact an individual's neurological deficits and also their long-term survival and how they're going to do. And so understanding the Circle of Willis is really important. But again, this really, really complex 3D anatomic structure that, unless you're deep inside someone's brain, as the everyday physician, you're not going to get a chance to really learn this, examine this, manipulate it. That's where a virtual reality representation comes into play. Or alternatively, we 3D printed this same structure and gave it to students to really take in their hands and move around and turn it and look at it from different angles. And for me, that's incredibly exciting. We're not all going to learn from the lecture. Some of us are just going to need different tools and technologies to facilitate our learning of these incredibly complex subjects. And I'm personally really, really honored and excited to be at a school that's constantly focusing on this forward technological innovation, really never really being happy with staying in the same place for too long, trying to come up with new tools and technologies that we're going to really be able to use to help students of all shapes, sizes, and learning styles to master the materials that are going to make them good doctors and good physicians. And I think that's ultimately the dream. We're not just doing technology for technology's sake. All these innovations are directed with the goal of making better doctors for the future. And I think that we really are accomplishing that. That's what's so exciting for me.
So we need your help if you do come here, or if you're interested in any of these things. Reach out to IIME, the Institute for Innovations for Medical Education. Reach out to me. You can get that information from the admissions office, and we can figure out how to really maximize these tools to unlock something that you probably didn't even know you had. I know that faculty member did not realize that she's a world-class artist, 3D artist. But now she is, where she created a 3D object, shared it with students online, and then printed those objects, was able to use them as artifacts in the class for students to see. It was an awesome workflow to see happen, and I think it's just the tip of the iceberg for unlocking students and faculty.
Yeah, so come one, come all, whether you be a tech nerd or just a student who's never seen or touched a VR device in your life, this is exciting stuff, and it's accessible, and it's open here to NYU students. So we really hope to get people excited and involved. We want to hear your ideas, get your ideas for how we can make this better, make this work for you, because that's what it's all about. Working with the folk at IIME for the past couple of years has really just been a real demonstration that people are passionate here about innovating, and not just innovating, again, for innovation's sake, but really for our student body. And that, for me, has been fantastic. So hope to see you all here next year, enjoying some of these exciting technological advances. And if you see me around, certainly feel free to say hello.